So, welcome to the Reach and Eden podcast. So, this is a podcast involving the development members of the Gears of Eden video game and the processes we go through as we make it. So, today we have Sledge, our creative director, with us.
Hello.
And then we also have Eric, who is the lead writer for the game.
Hello.
And rounding it out is the host, me, Michael, and I help manage the project. So, just kind of going over what we'll be discussing today. First off, we're going to be doing some Gears of Eden news. And then each of the members here will be sharing our piece of inspiration that we found throughout the week. And then we'll close it off with some of the games that we've played this week. So, we've been discussing a little bit about Gears of Eden and what we've been doing and getting ready for the alpha and all that stuff. Eric, I know we've been discussing a little bit about the dialogue system and what we're doing with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically our process has been pretty straightforward. We want to get like the ideas written down in a form that we're proud of to an extent, and then porting that over into our dialogue event system. Initially when this process started though, I was a little concerned because I had to move like the week that it had to be done. And I was worried that like being the lead writer, since I wasn't there, nothing would happen. But I was completely wrong. Sledge and another guy we have on the team, Nick, did a fantastic job coming up with this huge, like, I think it was like 5 pages worth of lines. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was a lot.
I'm so grateful.
Well, I was nervous that you were out too, so I better add some more lines.
I could tell because you really went with, like, I have like this section of like 8 lines that I had time to write, and these guys are just like, no, yeah, we're just cranking it out. And it was a very good feeling just to see like my team working, and it was a great feeling to know that like as a leader, like I can instruct them and they can make things happen, even if I'm not able to actually participate myself.
Yeah, it kind of helps take a little bit of the stress off you.
Yes.
And so you guys may be interested in when you're going to finally be able to kind of get into it. And so the next thing we're going to be talking about is our user notifications and how getting more people into the game. Sledge, you know a little bit more about that, so why don't you take it?
Yeah, no problem. So real quick, just to sort of bridge what Eric was talking about, we have our program team sort of split in half right now. One part of it is working on taking the dialogue lines that Eric was talking about that we have now finalized and written, and sort of putting those into our dialogue system and wrapping the rules around them in terms of, when they display, what are the conditions that make them appear, and make sure they don't overlap with one another and that they're spaced out appropriately. And then the other side of the team is working on our user admin system. So this is a system that allows us to assign subscribed users into groups, into different alpha waves, and set time windows into those waves. So, we don't want them to be open indefinitely. And then the last part, and really what we're focusing on now, is sort of the user notification system that's going to allow us to select a group, hit a button, send out a bunch of emails that will say, hey, you're part of the alpha testing. Here's where you can go to download the demo, and here's where you can, here's your key that you'll need to access the game. So, that'll all be coming online, hopefully, here in a little bit as we get closer to our official announcement on when our release will be. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, that's cool. And actually, speaking about the developers, you're talking about, the dialogue and kind of like the quality of life stuff. So I can make a huge announcement for everyone is we have finally changed the volume sliders. So now when you finally open the game, it's not going to be blaring in your face. And I'd love to thank the programmers for that. So thank you so much.
It's such a good song. I really like it, but it just comes in so loud right away. Like immediately I'm going for the mute button on my computer, just like free myself.
Exactly. Yeah, and thanks, Reed's the one on the team that got that done, and it was so great because he went and listened to the podcast, and then the next day I had this message from him with all it was an image of this screen he had made in the options menu for volume slider, and so that was a awesome result of the first podcast, if nothing else.
Yeah, so it's already been a success. Well, speaking of the volume and all that kind of stuff, we've also been doing some of the temporary sound effects, right?
Yeah, and before this, we haven't had any sound in the game. So really in this last week or the last few days, it's the first time we have sound other than music in the game. And this is something that we had polled people about on Twitter and that we've discussed internally for a while. And we feel like we want to take the approach where, even though it goes against reality, that we have sound in space, just because it like will help so much with the player experience and feeling like you're there. And just, it would kind of be extremely boring if it was totally silent game the whole time and just with like that background music playing. So we put some placeholders in right now, and these are just like motor sounds mostly for things like opening your solar panels or extending your drill or your camera. So we'll have that in the alpha. We'll get feedback on it and see if it feels like really out of place for people or if it kind of feels natural, even though it's completely unnatural.
Yeah, and I love to remind people that it is temporary. So even though you may hear the motors, it's not the actual sounds that we're going to be using. We'll actually send someone up into space and get the proper Foley sound. So don't worry about that. So that's been what's going on with the Gears development this week. Now let's kind of step back for a second, and we're going to be talking about some of our inspiration. So I've asked the guys here, and they've been happy enough to oblige that we're an example from their own lives, whether it's entertainment, news, the internet, really anything that does simply one thing: inspire. And this is to kind of give you guys an idea of what we use to fuel our creativity. So Eric, what's been your inspiration this week?
Honestly, this week, my inspiration is just the momentum of already going. Like, I'm writing every day. I'm working and making sure that I keep at it. And just the cumulative effort keeps me going with it. And it's actually a really nice feeling.
Yeah, you get that kind of accomplishment from kind of getting that discipline going and knowing that you can do it when you may not even feel like you want to do it.
Yeah, and I have this cool little app called Streaks.
Oh, I have that too. Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, it's where you can you set like goals and accomplish every day, and every time you accomplish it, you hit the little button and it like gives you a little green dot. But if you miss it even once, your streak goes away. So right now I'm up to
So what's your current streak?
Right now I don't have my phone on me. I think it's like at 12 days.
Nice.
Which is basically been every day since I moved.
Yeah, when you get a big, like one of my streaks right now, I have at 102 days.
Oof.
And it's definitely one of those things, like, and it's one of my things that I had where it's awesome when you do something when you don't want to do it.
Yes.
Like it was like late at night. I have to do this thing every night. It's basically, just taking my vitamins, making sure I prepare myself before I go to sleep. And it was just one of those nights where I just wanted to go to sleep. I didn't want to have to deal with it. And the thought popped in my head that I can skip one day. It's just one day.
Yeah.
But luckily, when you get that good habit going, you get that discipline going, like the immediate thought after that was like, no, that I need to go up and do this right now. So
that was me. That was me last night. Because the night before I'd had this crazy migraine. I took some medicine that made me feel just so nauseous that throughout the rest of the day I was just a wreck. And then yesterday I was like recovering for the first half of the day. So I was like, okay, I'm sick today. I'm just not going to deal with any of these goals that I have. I'm just going to relax and watch like anime or something. But like around 3 or 4, I was like starting to feel that pull of like, I don't want to lose this streak. I just want to keep it going. And it was partly because I was watching Haikyuu, which is this really hype anime, and I didn't want to let them down. So I just like got on my bicycle thing and started pedaling like crazy for half an hour. And then I went to my desk to write just 500 words. Like I try to go for 1,000 or 2,000 every day, but just like with how I was feeling, 500 was a trophy.
Yeah, and that's a good point where you sort of amend your goals. So instead of just not doing anything, you amend your goal to make it, more achievable. And like that's far better than just totally skipping out. And you have at least that sense of accomplishment and feel better. And like that'll carry you forward into the next day.
Oh, yeah.
So I might have to check out the Streaks app.
It's such a great app. Like I've been looking for something like this. But one of my favorite authors, like they're one of those authors that just puts out so much. Like I think right now they have 14 drafts due throughout this year and next year. Like that's insane. But they just work every single day. And they're not like, there's this author, John Salzi, who can write, seriously, 2,000, 3,000 words every single day. And he's just a machine. This person has days where it's like, oh, thank God, I got out 300 words or 200 words even. But because they're able to be so consistent and working every single day on it, they're able to have this huge, prolific career where, like...
So who is that? Is it someone you can share?
I don't know if I mentioned it in like the last podcast or one of the test podcasts, but V.E. Schwab.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Like I like her writing in general, but watching how she goes through the process is very inspiring.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. So, Sledge, what's been your inspiration for this week?
All right, I got a couple things I decided to share for the podcast. One is I saw, it's been a couple weeks ago now, but I saw Alien Covenant when it came out, which is the sort of the prequel Alien film by Ridley Scott. Takes place about 10 years after Prometheus, and it's still, I think it's like somewhere around 30 years maybe before the first Alien movie. All right, and so I know a lot of people had problems with Prometheus, and I did too, and they are very much justified. And to me, like the main problem in Prometheus were just like logic issues where you couldn't believe a character would behave in a certain way, or like to me the magic goo stuff is a big problem. So like that being said, I still enjoyed Prometheus, and like my argument at the time then, like for supporting it was, even if it fails in some ways, I really appreciate what it's attempting, and I want to see more movies that, have this hard sci-fi and sort of this philosophical questions brought up in it. Like I'd like to support films that are making that effort and see more films like that, so that we're not like only getting sci-fi movies that are, Guardians of the Galaxy and.
So we have a sci-fi movie that isn't Passengers.
Yeah, and. So it's either something like that, or it's just like the really big, like sci-fi action movies. So, and like those are great, but like, I don't want everything to be that way. So I really appreciated the tone and the mood of Prometheus, even if like there was just some really stupid parts in the film. And so Alien Covenant, I felt like I didn't know what to expect. Like in Prometheus, you sort of see Elizabeth Shaw going off with the head of David into the ship and like taking off to go find the engineer's homeworld. And I really think it was a good mix of, it wasn't quite as esoteric maybe as Prometheus was, but it also wasn't just the straight horror film in space that Alien was. So I thought it did a good job balancing the two, and it actually had a lot of questions and a lot of themes that were relevant to some of the work that we're doing in Gears of Eden. And I don't want to spoil anything. I don't think either of you have seen it yet, but I think like when you guys see it, we'll talk about it and maybe talk about, how some of it does apply to Gears of Eden and just some similar questions and explorations that we have, but of course in a totally different tone and setting and style. But so I liked Alien Covenant better than Prometheus. It still has some problems that carry over from the first movie, but overall I think there's far less problems, and the problems and the questions that it does leave open are a little more interesting to digest and to think about and contemplate.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And, I think we can all agree here that everyone that's working on this game is definitely huge sci-fi lovers. So,
oh, yeah.
What's a robot?
Right? So I totally understand, your argument in terms of like what Prometheus was trying to do, what Aliens Covenant was trying to do. When you think of classic sci-fi movies, you're thinking of like Aliens, that whole series, and like, Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, Star Trek, so, these shows that, I feel like they had the same pattern as like sci-fi novels, of where it was just more of kind of like like an outlook on just like on human beings and how they would function with, this sort of technology or this sort of technology. So, I can definitely see where Prometheus is trying to take a much more human, personal approach.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with like their decision to actually make a sequel to Prometheus, because the reception of Prometheus wasn't super high, possibly. But rather than just like going, oops, that wasn't a thing we did, like you'll see in like Star Wars Episode 7, that really does not want to touch on the prequels at all. But you have Alien Covenant, it's like, okay, we have this issue in our past, but there's something worthwhile there to move forward. And I'm sure like Star Wars is going to take more from the prequels, but still, like, it's very afraid of them. Just like I would have expected Alien Covenant to be afraid of Prometheus. But clearly, since they have, 2 characters with, who's the actor? He was,
Michael Fassbender.
Fassbender, yeah. There's like 2 Michael Fassbender characters in this.
That is correct.
They're owning their past.
They're doubling down
They're
on
literally
Fassbenders.
doubling down on Fassbender.
So what was your other inspiration, Sledge?
The other one is much more down to earth in a way, but just, from the real world. I don't know if you guys saw this video of, there's an amateur video of a Indian rocket that was launched recently. And what's neat about it is you get a different perspective of this rocket launch because it's actually shot, from pretty far away with like this camera that has an amazing zoom on it. And whoever's doing the filming, they did a pretty good job of keeping the rocket in frame as it's basically like going up and leaving the atmosphere. And you see the different stages kick in on the rocket.
Yeah, so that was fun because I was watching it and I thought that was the actual professional. Like I thought it was like one of their scientists that was taking that video. I thought it was weird, just like that seems a little different from like what NASA or anyone else would be doing. But you're right. It was still a very interesting video to see that kind of go off, especially from a country that hasn't been doing space exploration or anything space related.
Yeah, and I think like that's what's neat right now is there's a lot of countries like, so India's getting into space, and China, they've got some rovers and some other equipment on the moon now, and they want to send a manned mission to the moon pretty soon. And then, we're trying to get to Mars. So there's just a lot of, and then SpaceX, obviously another one, like they're doing a lot of work, like resupplying the space station and things like that. So there's a lot of progress going on right now, it feels like, in the whole space industry.
What was funny was, do you remember the article? It was, I want to say it was like the Reddit page I think I was looking at when they were showing the China rover and when it was on the moon taking pictures, and it actually found the previous, space landing. And I was kind of just reading through the comments, and one of them was, I'm trying to think of the name of the director that they, who's the guy who directed Space Odyssey?
Kubrick.
Yeah, they're talking about they did a really good job copying Kubrick's work.
Touche.
Touche. I feel like, yeah, they did a really good job.
I mean, I hate the fake moon theory, but I do love the idea of like Kubrick working on like a fake moon film, like. And like the whole idea with that theory is like they were doing it when they were filming 2001, or like like reusing some of the same stuff, and that's a pretty awesome fan theory.
Yeah,
I would love for part of that to be true.
I grew up in a household that doesn't necessarily entirely believe about the moon landing. Hearing that they like China saw our stuff up there is so vindicating. Oh my god.
On the other end of the spectrum is my family, where certain parts of my family think there are aliens living inside the moon.
Oh, your family's fun. I would love to be that paranoid. Like, the world must be such a fun place.
Yeah, like anything is possible.
I actually never thought of it that way. Yeah, that's a great outlook on the world. Anything is possible.
Well, it's not that anything, it's not so much anything is possible, it's that nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
I like that a lot more. So for my inspiration, it was actually something recent. They were talking about the largest virtual universe ever simulated. So it was pretty cool. Where I think it was the University of Zurich. It was some researchers. They were able to use a supercomputer, and I think it was like something like 25 billion virtual galaxies they generated. But what was really cool was just them being able to develop like a whole universe on its own. And what made me kind of get thinking on the game side of things was just how much space you can put in a video game nowadays. Like, so like some of the more popular ones like Skyrim and like Legend of Zelda, they're known for having these huge maps for trying to fill a game up and make sure that it is fun to play. Can be a difficult challenge. You know what I mean?
Do you ever think that like sometimes they get too big and it just becomes overwhelming? Or what are your thoughts on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and I think that the issue sometimes is, the fact that when you make a space too big that is also empty is basically just kind of a blank box.
Yeah.
So, so that's something that we're having to think about and make sure that we don't come across those same pitfalls.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with Gears, we sort of started out with the idea that we want to give people like a smaller, options of locations, but to have those locations have meaning and to be crafted into having significance for a story and to tell a story. So, there's all types of different games and different, gameplays, and people, are looking for different things from different games. But for us, I think that was our approach, was like, let's not just try to like throw in this whole massive open world in there, but to have like a more handcrafted, plan and development and path for the users to explore.
Well, there was this actually a period of time where I could not get into open world games anymore. Like I got so burnt out on it. And I eventually realized, like from thinking about it, it wasn't that I was burnt out on open world games or just scope in general. It was these huge worlds that were filled with content that didn't really mean anything. Like this is the classic Ubisoft thing where it's like you have this huge, beautiful place with all sorts of possibility, and what they do with it is they have you go find some treasure chests with like $100 in there or a feather, and that like. It isn't engaging content. It's just content to do when you're like listening to a podcast or doing nothing at all.
Yeah, yeah.
It does have that nice like rhythm, I guess, if that's what you're looking for. But that's never what I'm looking for.
I think I've actually noticed a shift in my like own perspective, like in the last 10 years or so. Like when you would first get into those games where it like had these huge open world capabilities, and there would be this draw of like, anything you can see around you, like if you can see a mountain that's miles away, like you can actually get there and like, wow, that's new and it's exciting and different. And now when I load into a game like that, I'm like, oh crap, that mountain is so far away. Like that means it's going to take me forever to get there.
It has the opposite reaction.
Yeah. So it's like too much can be a bad thing sometimes.
When you get there, it's going to be this feeling of like, it didn't mean anything. I'm here now and I got some little chime and an achievement maybe. And I like one of my goals for like 4 Gears of Eden is for however big we decide to make it, I want everything you do to like be meaningful in some way, either like conceptually, not lore, but just world relevance, or just personally meaningful.
Yeah, and I think like for me, it needs to like it all comes back to the story, and like that's something that's very important to me when I've done film, and something that we always say is like none of it matters unless it all comes back to the story and it matters for the story. And not that like everything in this game will have, story meaning, some things will just be in there for gameplay purposes, but like at the end of the day, like I don't think I would be excited about this project if it didn't have a story to tell, if we didn't have a story to tell. Yes. And so ultimately, like you might go off the story path sometimes, but there's always going to be a reason for you to get back on the story path, and like the destinations you're going to go to and different things you experience eventually will all come back to story. Like that's what's going to drive you through it.
Well, I think the important thing to take from it is there's no reason to do anything that's meaningless. So what we try to do is to make sure everything that we do has purpose. Yeah. So, and I've been realizing that with films, with books, with everything, there's no reason to bring attention to something unless it has a purpose for what you want to do. Whether it has anything to do story relevance, whether it has anything to do gameplay wise, it needs to have a purpose and it needs to be there for a reason and not just to fill space.
Yeah. So your inspiration kind of reminds me of The Matrix, right? Like we're talking about these simulated worlds. So
yeah, right.
If you guys were in The Matrix and you got out, would you, like, to me, like in the movie, Cypher's the smartest one because he figures out he just wants to go back in and like live in this perfect world. And I'm like, yeah, that's the right choice. Look how it turned out for everyone else in the film. I don't know. Yeah,
I think I always think of myself in the same scenario where I just like, I'd be okay with having that knowledge, but I almost might make the same choice as him.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, it's like that's what we're trying to create for ourselves anyway. Like we're trying to get virtual reality that is like that good and entertaining, and then maybe we can unplug from the real world. And so we just need some robot enslavers to do it for us, I guess.
Pretty much. Well, so I think there's some arguments for us being a simulation, right?
Yeah, I sent you a thing earlier about the simulation argument, and if anyone's interested in that whole simulation reality and the possibility of our world itself being a simulation, it's definitely worth checking out. So we can put that in the links. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was just just the fact of, I think, if we are in a simulation, it's undeniably true that if we're in a simulation, there is a civilization above us that is in charge of that kind of stuff. And it could be this true for that civilization above us, that they may have someone above them, and so on and so forth. So
turtles all the way down.
Yeah, he can get very heavy minded, but that also brings up the other thing that I think we talked about a little bit, which was the Fermi paradox.
Yeah.
And specifically the Great Filter, which just fascinates me beyond belief, man. It's cool to kind of have those like mental, just those mental games. I think you can look at it just where you think of all different possible scenarios and look at your different theories, and just, it's good like mental exercise, I think.
So do you guys personally think there is intelligent life out there, like in our universe, whether it's simulated or not?
Definitely like to think so.
I would be very surprised if there wasn't. Like, it just seems statistically really, really slim, the chance that there isn't anything else out there.
Well, have you heard of the Great Filter, Cooper?
Yes.
Okay, so I like the three things that they talk about, which is that we're rare, and so we're one of the few species that actually have gone past the Great Filter. And then there is the other one, which is like we're the first ones to be crossing that like finish line or whatever what you want to call it. And then the other one, which is that we're doomed and there's nothing we can do about it because we have the Great Filter right ahead of us. So
maybe they're just avoiding us because of what we are. So
that's an interesting way to look at it.
I mean, you can look at it and like take that in a negative way, or you could just look at it like they could be avoiding us because involving themselves with a civilization that's like figuring itself out at this stage, it would do nothing good for that civilization.
Well, and also, there's always been the talk that maybe aliens have visited us before, and maybe our creators are aliens and all that stuff, which actually brings it back to the Prometheus talk that we were having earlier. And it's I love that idea. I love that concept, and I love how people. There's always so many people trying like different little little messages with that concept. So
I think of the possibilities you bring up, like the one where we are sort of the first one out of the gate and we're the most advanced, is the saddest to me, because it's like we're the mentors, and like, sorry guys, this is the best we figured out. We just kill each other, and like you kind of want this idea of, like, if there is something else out there that like maybe they would be more advanced to us because they could, maybe they're more enlightened, or they have, evolved socially or culturally, beyond what we know, and like they could help us pull us along. But be really sad if like, that's us.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that we use for inspiration, kind of like on a week-to-week basis. It's not supposed to be motivation, guys, but it helps us get our creative juices flowing, and it gets our minds on the right track so we can get that information down for you guys. So before we sign off, kind of want to leave it on a little lighter note. So we're just going to be talking a little bit about the games that we've been playing. And this is just to kind of give you guys an insight of who we are. So Eric, what did you play this week?
So last week I wasn't playing like anything at all. This week I'm playing 2 games. I've been playing Persona 5 because I need to lose weight, and I found that I can exercise really well, like on a stationary bicycle, if I'm playing a JRPG, like just some little game where it's turn-based and I'm just clicking through conversations and just like fighting bosses and stuff. If I can focus on that, I can just ride and hurt my legs for a whole hour and burn out like 700, 800, 900 calories. It's so goofy.
That's the best.
But it's.
I think you need to do a video series, the Eric workout.
If someone had told 4th grade me that I could lose weight by playing these games, I would be so fit and so skinny and looking so great right now.
That's pretty awesome.
But at the same time, I'm also playing RuneScape, that game that we all played in middle school.
I'm gonna say I never played it, and I feel bad.
You never played RuneScape? Well, it didn't exist when you were in middle
What are you
school,
trying
Sledge.
to say? Oh.
I'm saying you're old, but RuneScape to me is like the best MMO. Like Star Wars Galaxies from forever ago might give it a run for its money, but just like the quests in RuneScape are so like there's this limited frame of interactions that you can have in that game. It's mostly just left clicking, right clicking. But the way that the quests are able to like contextualize what you're doing with puzzles and just emotional resonance of the story is one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen in gaming.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking of that, I think Sledge, that's part of the games that you've been playing this week, right?
Yeah, so Eric got me hooked into RuneScape. I can't say I've really been playing it yet. I did go and I created a character and I started the first tutorial, but at the time I was out of town on a work trip and I was on hotel internet, which was really bad. So it could not keep up and I had like a really bad experience fighting the first zombie. So I will get back on in the next week when I'm at home now and I have my regular internet connection, so I'll check it out again. I did, however, get a chance to play something that you recommended in the last podcast, which was Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun. It can definitely get stressful at time, and it's it can be frustrating. Like, and it really can tell you that you're not as good at communicating as you think you are. So, like you said, it's very good for teamwork and team building and just like a really good check on how well you're communicating, and you have to communicate like efficiently and clearly in that game or people do explode. So that was a lot of fun.
And people die, and it may be virtual, but
Yeah.
you know, the person's
Still
dying.
hurts.
And that kind of weighs on your soul.
And then my go-to games sort of are Overwatch and Rocket League, so I've gotten a chance to get a little time on both of those in this week as well.
So Sledge and I were playing Overwatch this past couple hours. And our team like was doing nothing for us. It was one of those situations where like we had a Mei trying to kill a Widowmaker, which was the most annoying thing in the world to begin with. But our team was so unreliable. But Sledge comes in like a champion and is just like pinning everyone down as D.Va. And I kept dying, and like he would be talking like over our little voice comm thing, being like, "Okay, I killed the Genji. I killed the Orisa. I killed the." He just
See, that's not true because I never like remember their names when I'm playing. So I'm just like, I killed the.
Okay, I was trying to talk you up a little bit, but you're really good. So you were saying ninja. You did say unicorn multiple times.
Wait, who's Unicorn?
That's Orisa.
Oh.
She's not even a unicorn.
at all. That's how dedicated I am to Overwatch. But yeah, I enjoy playing, and every once in a while I have a good.
You are far better than you give yourself credit.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone needs that outlook. Yeah, so I actually feel bad about mine because I actually haven't played RuneScape, and I think I should, just so we can keep that.
So we can bond over RuneScape.
Yeah, exactly. But the game actually that I actually finally had some time to play was Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
How was it?
It was pretty fun. Like, I always give a game like a thumbs up when I realize that I've been playing it for a couple hours and I still feel I haven't done much and I still want to keep doing stuff. I felt that way about like Mass Effect, like any of the Mass Effect games, like Skyrim a little bit, so I'm excited to kind of delve more into it,
Yeah, I really miss Zelda. Like, I don't think I've played a Zelda game since maybe like Ocarina of Time on the N64 because
That's a while, yeah.
Yeah, it's a while, and I owned the Nintendo Wii, and I don't know if there was a Zelda game that came out on that or not, but I just haven't, like now it's gotten to the point where like there's certain properties I like on Nintendo, but I feel like I'm not going to buy another system like just for one or two games. But like I really miss Zelda because that was one of like the first and best games I played, on the original NES. So I'm tempted, but I don't think I'm gonna like jump in yet.
Yeah, well, it was weird because I didn't want to drop $360 just to play a Zelda game.
Yeah.
But luckily, I have a Wii U, which, and I'm just going to kind of leave that alone. But I'm glad I was able to have something where I could play Zelda on, and yeah, it's been pretty fun. I've been enjoying it, and from what other people have been saying about it, it's probably one of the best Zelda games. And and actually, I think they've been knocking it out of the park with the Zelda games. Just like the last 3 or 4 of them have been just phenomenal. But I think this one is just, everyone can agree that it's probably one of the best ones yet since Ocarina. So
yeah, it looks really fun.
Yeah,
I'll just have to play it vicariously through you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say that you bought a Switch, like you caved finally and bought a Switch. And I was so excited to this is my chance to get Michael to play Monster Hunter. Because that feeling you get of you were playing for hours and you didn't get much at all done compared to what there is. That is Monster Hunter 2.
The thing I'll say to add to that though is, as long as there's an ending that I know I can find, Monster Hunter, I feel like there's just I can continuously go on forever and ever, and that's when I know it's a trap for me.
There is technically an ending to Monster Hunter. There actually no. Basically, the way Monster Hunter goes, there's this story section where it does give you a complete you feel accomplished at the end of that, and then there's the second story, which gives that same sort of feeling, and then there's Nightmare Mode raiding in Star Wars: The Republic, which is which is actually where we all met, because we are all tough guys on the internet. It's just this really high level content that's focused on teamwork and knowing the game.
Yep.
And then you play that until you're done.
Maybe I'll give that a try next week.
I'm going to get you into it.
Sounds good. So that's going to be wrapping it up for this week, guys. Thanks for listening. So if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you and what you think of the podcast. So you can contact us and find out more about Gears of Eden at www.gearsofeden.com or on Twitter or Facebook. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about anything that we've discussed today, you're going to find the links in the blog entry for this podcast on our website. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And until then, we're the Gears of Eden development team, and we're reaching Eden. We hope you join us.